Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Anthony Larkin, and here you'll find me recounting near-death experiences or other spiritual encounters that individuals have experienced. Today's near-death experience is part 2 of Dr. Linda Kramer's near-death experience, which she has documented in her 369-page book titled 5 Years in Heaven. To listen to the first part of this narration, you can check the link above or in the video description below. This will take you directly to the first part of 5 Years in Heaven by Dr. Linda Kramer. Otherwise, if you are joining me to continue on Linda's journey, then sit tight, relax, get comfortable, and let's continue Dr. Linda Kramer's fantastic journey. The building was not new to me, yet it was familiar. I had been here before, yet I could not remember the specific memory of when I had been here previously. It did not annoy me at all, just a realization or a familiarity that I was experiencing. I did not question the why do I need to go into this place, and I did not question what happens inside this place. Like most would ask, I felt safe. As I looked at this building, I had a familiar apprehension that all was good inside this building. There was only good. Nothing bad was going to happen. And it was in that understanding of the familiarity that I proceeded to go inside. Entering, I was in what I can only describe as the most glorified and architecturally amazing building I have ever seen. If you can imagine the most majestic cathedral that you have ever seen, then multiply that magnificence by 10,000. The walls on either side of me had massive windows with a type of stained glass in them, but it was not like the stained glass here on Earth. The glass itself was dimensional and it had its own energy force like everything else in this place. The windows were huge, probably going 100 feet upward towards the ceiling. The walls that encased these windows were made of massive bricks like sandstone, but it wasn't that material. The walls were like a pale yellow, like sandstone, but again, the walls had their own energy force emitting from them. There were seats in this massive room that resembled pews that you would find in churches. These elongated chairs were on the sides against the walls. Everything in this room was one with each other, all connected and intertwined. The floor below me at this point was made of even finer and grander wood than the seats. So there I was, now present in a room that I just cannot comprehend to write about due to the sheer magnificence and the grandeur of it. I was standing. I had feet now because I could feel the floor beneath my heels, but it was not like the muscular sensation of sensing touch. It was more an energetic sensation of touch. I could feel the energy produced by the floor extending out of the floor and attaching itself, then entering it into my feet. I did not move at all from where I found myself when I entered this building. I was just standing there, and after a while of looking at the architecture of this building, I looked out in front of me and I saw the Big Three. There is no other way to describe these three beings but to call them the Big Three. I did not initially see them, considering they were right in front of me at the other end of the cathedral. I was too enthralled by the majesty and beauty of this building that I was totally absorbed by the architecture I was observing. Some call them the Ancient Ones or the High Council, but considering these beings did not officially introduce themselves to me, I am in no way going to assume them to be the Ancient Ones or representatives of some sort of council. Therefore, I will keep calling them the Big Three. They were in front of me, at the front of this magnificent room where I found myself. They had no physical form, however, I could clearly see what I interpret to be a head and shoulders. There were no facial features, no clothing, and above all, nothing at all to let me know whether these beings were human or from some other place, like the blue orbs that I mentioned earlier. The middle being of the three was the tallest. I would say this being was like 12 feet tall. The other two on either side were about 10 feet tall. Where their heads were, it was like looking into a dimensional trance of energy. The energy emitted from these beings' heads and radiated down their bodies to their chests, or where their chests would be, and at the same time, this energy also travelled up from the chest area to the head area. It appeared to me like a waterfall of energy, travelling both up and down simultaneously, but ultimately all swirling like a whirlwind of energy around and in their head areas. It was the same bright light that I had seen in the orbs, but again, it was not blinding. Instead, it was inviting. The three beings knew everything because they were everything. They had their own intelligence and it was pure energy. There was no definitive end to the white that they were, and the room around them was connected to them through the energy they all emitted. They intertwined and were connected to the room. They were the room, one with everything around them. I was standing there in front of these gigantic beings in total shock. I had no idea who these beings were, but I was not scared at all by their presence. In fact, I was overcome with love at this point. The love emitted from my chest like a rainbow. It filled my very core and radiated out of me. It was constant and moving at the same time. The big three did not talk to me at all straight away. There was no need to. I got a full understanding. It was like a knowing, if you can call it that. I knew exactly why I was there and what I had to do. It is strange to write in descriptive words what I was feeling at this point, but all I can say is that I had a total understanding, a clear visualization, or if you want to call it, the knowing of everything. Had I ever stood in this place before? Had I experienced other lives where I had died and now stood here about to undertake my life review? I do not know, for I had no memory or cognitive awareness of being there before, but it was familiar. Like returning to a place from our childhood, that sort of familiar, but with no recollection at all about what happened, if I'd even been there at all. Everything was calm at this point. Further, there was no noise at all. It was total quiet. I was standing there in front of these beings with no noise, no external voices of people outside. In front of the big three, I saw something on the ground. It was not a box, but the only way I can describe it is to call it a box. This box released its own energy, emitting outwards and upwards, downwards and backwards, all at the same time. So there I was in this massive room, looking at massive beings and looking at this box-type thing on the floor in front of them. Then one of the three spoke. The voice was of the most engaging, attractive voice I had ever heard. It showed a compassion and love that I had never heard anyone else ever talk in this type of tone. When this being spoke, it was a magical entrancement of words that hit me to my very core. A total, compassionate and emphatic voice. The first thing they said was, "Are you prepared?" There was no mouth movements. It was all telepathic. I heard these words all within my own being at this time. I knew they were not my own thoughts, as the masculine tones all suggested to me that these beings were masculine energies, yet I have no definite proof that they were masculine. I then said yes, and at that point I realized that I was also speaking telepathically. It was as natural as talking here on Earth. However, there was no physical attempt made at all to talk. It just came naturally. Then the box opened. I did not open the box. These beings did not open it. It just opened by itself like on a cue. Did this box also have its own consciousness or its own perception? I'm guessing so, for it opened on its own merits without any external body opening the lid. Remember here, everything in this place was one with each other, and everything was connected and had its own consciousness. Every single thing knew the intention of every single other thing in this place, for all were connected and therefore everything was one. Inside this box, there was no space. It was eternal. No walls inside the box. It was like looking inside a galaxy. Reminiscent of the Doctor Who TARDIS, the walls and floor did not exist once I looked inside this box. But there was no galaxy inside this box. Instead, it was videos of every single thing I had ever done whilst on Earth. Every action I had done. Each of these videos, just like little television screens, were inside energetic bubbles. All of the bubbles were the same size, with the same energy emitting from them. It appeared like each bubble had its own aura of energy, and that the energy was the bubble, and then the bubble was also on the screen in which I was watching a replay of a memory of my life. As I looked inside the box and saw memories from Linda's years on Earth, I saw Linda as a baby, as a toddler, as a school student, and as an adult. I saw her married to her first husband. I saw her traveling to America, where she married her second husband. All of Linda's life and memories were inside this box. Millions and millions, perhaps even billions of videos of each instance and each event that created memories. Each video was floating inside its very own bubble. I was then directed by the big three that I could pick one out and watch the memory whilst I held it in the palm of my hand. Again, there were no voices. It was just a clear, conscious awareness of what I had to do. But I didn't know at the time what I needed to do, so this direction or request was obviously from them. Just like little bubbles, but with a video playing inside them. That is what Linda's memories looked like. The first memory that I picked out of this box with no walls was of Linda when she was aged about 5 years old. Linda was at her grandmother's house and she was playing with her grandmother's white cat. As this memory attached itself to my palm, I was instantly now Linda, reliving this memory. It felt to me like this memory had melded or melted, and then we were fused together, collective as one. I instantly remembered as a memory that I had grabbed the cat's tail. This memory of the cat was my first memory that I had to relive and then evaluate within myself as to why Linda did that action. I looked at the cat, remembering from my young years how gorgeous this cat was. I felt an overwhelming sensation of compassion, gratitude, appreciation and love for this cat, and whilst I stood in this heavenly place being observed by the big three, I watched the memory from being an outsider. I saw a replay of this event, which probably only took 5 to 10 seconds, and I saw Linda and the cat both sitting on the ground in her grandmother's front yard. So I was external to this memory at this point. However, it was an instant transformation and I was now back to being myself. At the time of being a 5-year-old, I looked over to the cat and saw him calmly sitting next to me. I was there, but I was not there. I had no ability to change the proceedings of this event, and I had no way of notifying my younger self that I was there, being a part of this memory. And then I pulled the cat's tail. I felt the intention that I had and how I thought I wanted to pull the cat's tail. I felt that there was no malice to this event. There was no intention or harm at all. In fact, as a 5-year-old, I felt giggly and happy to want to pull its tail. So firstly, I had to be me and experience this event. I had to go through the cognitive thought process of how I made up my mind to do this action. And then I had to look at why I actually did it. What benefit was there to gain from this action? Or what was the consequence that I was expecting from this action? All without judgment, for they had said not to judge. Instantly, I was filled with the happiness of being a 5-year-old, sitting in the sun on the grass in my grandmother's front yard. Instantly, I felt how much I loved this cat, and it was tenfold. As soon as I recognized the emotion of how I felt, it overcame me like a truck, bursting through like a waterfall. I did not have to judge what I did back then as a child. I had to learn how to act in a more loving and compassionate manner. I had to acknowledge what intention I had for every single action I had ever done whilst living in the life of Linda, and evaluate if I had been living my life in accordance with universal energies. It was an instant knowing that I did not have to judge myself for every action I did on earth, but more so to forgive and to heal those energetic pulses of negativity that spiked in my life energy. I had to feel every pain, every disappointment, and every resentment that I had ever caused someone else to feel in order for me to forgive, heal, and to release all that energy back to where it was from, and to realign the universal energies back to positive love. So for example, if I had ever yelled at another person, I had to relive that memory, but from their perspective, I had to live, feel, and breathe the emotions that I caused other people. If I had been good to someone, I would feel that gratitude or love that that person felt. There was an amazing part to this. Not only do you feel the negative, you also feel the positive. I had to be accountable for my intentions towards others. And as I went through the good things that I had done whilst in the life of Linda, I felt it all tenfold. So after I heard the big one say, "You are not here to judge," I had this epiphany of realizing what it was that I was now obliged to do whilst in this review of the Linda life. It was this point that I saw the memory of Linda with the cat and proceeded to obtain the memory to evaluate what Linda had caused in that experience. So, in this instance with the cat, there was a clear process involved with dealing with this memory, which went like this. Number 1. I had to have the intention of which memory I would live again, and to watch it now in this space as an observer to that experience. Number 2. I had to then be Linda to evaluate what it was that Linda was thinking at that specific time. Was she happy? Was she sad? Did she have any negative intents that caused the physical action to occur? Number 3. I had to feel that pain or happiness as it was tenfold. Number 4. I then had to realize what emotion had caused that action. Number 5. Then I was the other being involved and be on that receiving end of that emotional event, now being the perspective of that other being. In this case, I was now the cat, feeling what Linda did to me. Number 6. I had to then account how that being, the cat which I was now, felt after they received my emotion or my energy at that time. 7. I had to fix the issue to resolve any pains or hurts within me, whereby I would not do that behavior again in the future to anyone else. Like in this instance, I had to learn how my emotions and intentions affect the other being, which was the cat. I had to realize what my intentions caused as a ripple effect of energy onto others. 8. I had to forgive myself for doing this action to the cat, and by doing this, I could heal the experience within myself and any other being involved. 9. I had to release that experience and return that emotion to the universe from which it came. So this first memory that I plucked out of the box, which wasn't a box, pertained to me pulling the cat's tail, was not a good experience for me at all. There was no way to escape the process of seeing this event from my perspective and then the perspective of the cat. I remember feeling happy that day in my youth, playing as a child in the front yard of my grandmother's house, and then I had to relive the joy of sitting there with the cat, and as I said, it was tenfold. My happiness was amplified. The joy came out of me in this ripple of delight emitting from me. I was in a totally euphoric state whilst I remembered how happy I had been in this situation when I was a child. Standing in this vast room, observed by the big three who were guiding me through this process, Total tears of joy ran down my face as I relived this happy time of my childhood, and the tears kept coming. Good tears of joy as I thought about playing with this cat and then pulling its tail. There was no memory, for it was happening now, in the present, for me now, standing in this place in front of the big three. But then it was instant, and I was now the cat on the receiving end of the action. Instantly I felt the pain that I had caused to the cat now that I was the cat. By being in the perspective of the cat, total confusion came over me. Almost like thinking, what did you do that for? I thought you liked me, type of confusion. Then I felt the pain of what the cat had felt. It started in my tail, where the human hand gripped my tail to squeeze it. Then, as the human pulled their hand away, pulling my tail, I felt that agonizing pain up through my tail into my spine, and it was tenfold. My tears of joy were now replaced with tears of pain, agonizing pain, the worst pain I had ever felt. It came out of me like electricity. It was horrible, terrible, excruciatingly traumatic, and I had caused that. And then I was crying uncontrollably from the pain that this human had caused me. I had to evaluate this event. Standing in front of the big three, I had to assess what I had done. I had to come to a solution to fix this problem, and I knew instantly that I never wanted to hurt someone or something like that ever again. The tears ran down my face, yet I did not want a tissue to wipe them away. It was a process I had to allow and to learn from. I stood there thinking about what I did, working out why I would do that to the cat. And it was probably a good 5 minutes of me having this epiphany of how I did not want to cause that to another being ever again. I was still crying uncontrollably, and as the tears ran down my face, they were not collecting in a puddle on the floor beneath me. It was like they were just dissolving as they fell to the floor. Forgiveness. How do I forgive me as a cat for what happened that day? I did not need to, for it was myself who I needed to forgive. I had to learn here that I was only doing what I thought was all right at the time, and I had no way of knowing that the consequence of that action would have such an impact on the animal I inflicted it on. I had to look at my own life as it had been when I was a young child, and to realize that this child was doing something that it did not know what was wrong. So, in that realization that I had of the young Linda was only doing what the young Linda thought was right and good, there was no punishment or judgment associated to this action. And for that time, as being the young Linda did not know it was wrong. Identifying something as being wrong can only come from wisdom and learning experiences. Learning what is right from wrong, evaluating each instance or energy or emotion that we emit to others, and then questioning if we actually knew that it was right or wrong. I had to tell myself that I was only doing what I thought best at the time. As the young Linda, I had to reiterate within myself to the core of me that this action was a learning experience. I had to learn that this action was something that I did not want to do again in my life, and I did not want to cause the emotion again to any other person. And as I came to that understanding of the experience, I had to let this memory go. It was like a cleansing of that memory. I just allowed that memory to exist in its entirety, yet universally balanced. I could now release that memory, for now I realized that this memory was nothing more than an energetic representation of my physical being in that time. Yes, it was energy, for it was the emotion that was the result of this action. Every action we do, regardless of its size or duration, is all connected to emotion, and emotion is energy. So once I had forgiven myself this energy of what had happened to me pulling the cat's tail, I remembered what the big three had said: you are not here to judge. I was not being shown this memory to judge it. I was being shown this memory to heal it. By forgiving myself for what I had done to the cat, I had healed that energetic pulse in that eternal wave of energy. Not all the memories that I went through were good ones. I looked inside that box that wasn't a box, and I observed all Linda's memories. Some of them were from her years in her 20s and some were from her 30s. I honestly do not know how many memories I went through, but to call it thousands would be a close estimate. Yet, I was in this huge cathedral being overseen by the big three, and I processed thousands of Linda's life memories. One memory that I saw inside the box was when Linda was about 16 years old. She was standing next to another girl at school. The memory of this event, so you understand, is that Linda had a crush on a boy at school who was very popular. He had a lot of admirers and he was always going with a new girl every week or two. In this memory, the 16-year-old Linda was telling another girl that she liked him, and she started telling Linda gossip that she had heard about him and how he uses girls to get his way and he was only after one thing. Linda did not like the way that this girl was telling her about who he was, and the two girls started an argument about him, resulting in Linda punching this girl straight across the face. She fell to the ground and didn't get up for a few minutes. I relived this memory as both experiences, as myself, Linda, and also as the girl who was hit. I could feel the pain as I fell to the ground. To heal this memory, I had to fathom the emotional attachment of both of these girls, to recognize their true intentions, and to identify that both of these girls only wanted the best for themselves. I realized in that instant that the 16-year-old Linda did in fact learn a valuable lesson that day. She learned not to use violence, to not be the aggressive person she demonstrated in this memory. And in the moment of realization that the 16-year-old Linda had learned a lesson that day, it was easy to forgive her for learning from her mistakes so she wouldn't do the action again in the future. And through that forgiveness came a healing, and as I healed and the releasing took place, I could feel how this action towards the other girl had been corrected in the universal energies. The memory inside my bubble floating in my palm simply disappeared. Linda continues to document a few more memories that she healed while she was stood in front of the three beings. She concludes this whole process of my life review was to heal what I had done in the past. So when I entered the space that most call heaven, I am cleansed, refreshed, and ready to accept what heaven represents, for I was a part of that intricate consciousness of that space. I also knew that there was no time limit on how long I wanted to process each memory. The longer I took, the more chance of a total healing from that one memory. For the life review is not heaven. It is almost like the pre-flight checks prior to a plane taking off, ensuring that once the plane is in the air, it will be a functional operating system within the altitude and will meld, join, and be a part of that air that exists up there. In continuum of this death experience, my time up there was not yet done. For again, I found myself in that fog. I had no idea where I was, for I had no memory of this place, yet the familiarity, just like that cathedral building, I knew it was just a part of me. I looked out into the whiteness of this area, trying to determine the size of this space. There were no shades or shadows, no objects or other matter that would show a sign of where I was. In this space, at this moment, everything was white. Then I saw her. She was far away, standing before me. She was tiny, as if in the distance. Then as she noticed me, she started walking towards me in a rushed sort of walk. She was walking through this space, and as she walked closer, I observed she was walking on nothing. There was no floor below her feet. She was walking on nothing. She had legs. I saw her dress, which was a simple brown dress, which was not the colour brown that we have on Earth. So I say brown only because brown is the closest colour to the amazing colour spectrum that exists in the dimensional plane. Her dress gathered at the waist, and it fell to her knees. Her legs were thinner than mine and she wore simple brown sandals that matched her dress. She had long brown hair which reminded me of my own coloured hair. I observed no jewellery on this woman and no other decorative items adorned her. As she came closer to me, I had the opportunity to really look at her, and as she walked towards me, she spoke. "What are you doing here?" she spat at me. She didn't say it like a question, more of an abusive and sarcastic statement rather than a question. Her mouth moved, just like here on Earth when we speak. There was no telepathic communication here at all. I saw her mouth move and I heard with my ears as the volume of her words came out of her mouth, which moved to the letters of the words she was saying. This was the first time whilst having this experience that I had come across any form of negative emotion. It sort of took me back a few steps with how prominent she was. This woman was not happy. She was downright angry and confused as to why I was there. She was waving her arms around and the next thing she said was, "Why are you here? Don't you know you're not supposed to be here yet?" She said this question with a definite confusion and frustration. She was obviously very flustered to see me there, like it was not expected, and she was angry that I was there, like I had any decisions in the matter at this point. She obviously expected me to answer her questions, but I did not know the answer. I was totally confused by the fact that I was now here, where I had just spent about a year or more in that beautiful cathedral processing my memories. I watched as the frustration on her face subsided, and I could tell that she was calming down. "Look, my name is Karina. I know you because we are related," she explained. I then asked her why I was there, because I was still as dumbfounded to find myself in this white space with no walls, ceilings, or floor. "It doesn't matter," Karina said, and raised her hands up and moved her head to the side as if she didn't want to talk to me why I was there. "Where am I?" I asked her, and she looked at me with eyes that burned straight through me. I felt instantly from the look on her face that I was supposed to know the answer. She then came closer to me, about 2 feet, and said, again, "Why are you here?" with emphasis on the why. Instantly, I thought I was in the wrong place. It was almost like I had gone into a staff-only area of the store. "Why are you here?" I then said to her, "I don't know why." "You are not supposed to be here," she said. "You've got to go back and finish it." I said, "Finish what?" And she got even angrier with me at this point. Her hands were starting to wave around again out of frustration, and she said in an extremely harsh sort of abusive tone, "Don't you realize why we've shown you all this?" To be honest, I was still trying to fathom out how she was walking towards me, where there were no floor, walls or ceiling in this place, and further, how was I standing there when there was nothing below my feet? But she continued to yell at me, and then I got a bit angry with her also, and I started to concentrate more on what she was saying rather than where we both were. I actually acknowledged her question, "You've got to go back and finish it." "Well, okay. Why did I get shown all of this then?" I asked her, trying to stay calm. She said something like, "You honestly don't know why you are here?" The pitch of her voice raised. Her tone was high, and the why in the middle of the sentence went up a few octaves. I replied no to her question, and that is when this conversation got weirder for me. "You were only here to see what this is like. You have to go back and tell others what this is like. You are going to have a daughter who is important to you. If you stay here, she will never be born. You are not supposed to be here. You have to go." Wait, what? Go where? A daughter? As I tried to remember what Linda had experienced, I realized that I had no memories at this point about the life of Linda and her memories on Earth. The only memories I had were those of in the field of flowers and the experiences or memories that I had created whilst I was there. I also remember going through the fog and arriving at the cathedral where I stood in front of the big three, but there was nothing before that. It was like I had been born into this place and I had grown up in this existence, just like a baby on earth. Karina then went into great detail about who she was. She explained that she was my great-great-great-great-grandmother, and the weird part was that she knew me, even though I didn't know or recognize her. It is hard to put into time how long she told me about her life when she was alive in the early 1820s. But when I try and calculate it, I would say she spent about 6 months to a year telling me about her life. I guess in hindsight, she did this to make me understand the situation where I was now. She wanted me to know the complexity of where I was and to fathom the vastness of this universe and how time does not exist where we both were in this white space. She spoke to me in depth about a lot of things, personal things, emotional issues that she had endured in her own lifetime. To give you, the reader, an insight into what she spoke about for 6 months or maybe a year, here is a short version of the long version. Not only did Karina tell me about the house she lived in, she told me in depth how her husband had built it with his brother, how they cut the timber, how they pulled the timber, how they placed the timber on top of each other, all in depth, how to make an axe. This story was interesting and fascinating as I never knew the intricate way of balancing the handle to make the axe in order to cut down trees. She told me how to cut down trees, not just any trees, but specific types of wood, and which trees were best for furniture, which were best for firewood, which were best for flooring or pathways. She told me how they made clothing, not only how to make the needle but also to make the cotton to sew fabric together to form sleeves or legs of a garment. She called it a scrim, whereby she would weave shorter threads together, making stronger threads so that she could use it to reinforce sleeves and around the crotch so clothing held together and would last longer. Linda goes on to document more instances that her great-great-great-great-grandmother had told her. She asked her about her future as Linda. You will have to check her book out to read all of this. She said that she detailed an intricate knowledge of what she would be doing in her life once she returned as Linda. Then, after we had spoken for probably a year or more, she said, "Don't you understand that if you go there, you can never go back?" As she said this, she was pointing behind me, so I turned around to see what she was pointing at. To be honest, when I first saw the tunnel behind me, I nearly fell over. I had been in this white space for the longest time, and I never realized it was right behind me the whole time. I always wondered why a moth would fly straight into a light, burning itself to death in the heat emitted by the light that this bug is so attracted to. That was exactly how I felt. I was drawn like a magnet to this tunnel. I had to physically restrain myself from not going into it. Behind me in this white space that completely encased everything in white was a round tunnel. The whiteness of the room faded not into black but a very dark colour, and the colour got darker towards the middle of the tunnel. The tunnel was moving in a circular manner, rotating both left and right at the same time, clockwise and anti-clockwise, and every ounce of my body wanted to go into that tunnel when I saw it. It was pulling me in with its attraction, causing me to go totally dizzy with excitement of going into that tunnel and seeing what was on the other side. I cannot explain the pull that this tunnel had, but it was like I could actually just float into the tunnel. It wanted me that much, and believe me, I wanted to go into it. As I looked into this blackened tunnel, I could see far through it. Right at the end was the most brightest light I have ever seen. This white light was far brighter than any other whites I had ever seen whilst having this experience. However, it did not burn my eyes at all. I had to use everything within me from not going into this tunnel. It was like gravity whereby I was being pulled into it. Karina never explained to me what exactly would happen to me if I did enter the tunnel. She never gave any indication of a process of what I would physically or energetically feel or witness, but she did tell me that if I went in there, I would never be able to return to my Linda life. Where did this lead to? What would happen to me if I went in there? Is this where people refer to as reincarnation, or is this just a tunnel like the fog stage that would transport me to another location or time? These were some of the millions of questions that came into my head when I first saw it. Karina started to explain this tunnel was not the end. This tunnel was the beginning. She outlined 3 very important things that this tunnel does. It allows us to reincarnate into another living entity. It allows us to allocate our life contract, and it allows us to re-evaluate our life lessons and to pick the ones or one that we want to learn in our next existence. Does everyone reincarnate? I asked. Simple answer is no. We do have a choice on what we do, and that is the part of our own free will to do what we want and to make decisions for ourselves. However, in saying that, when we reincarnate, it gives us the opportunity to experience new contracts with new lessons to be learned in that lifetime. She stated that when we are assigned to a life, we do not pick the year or the family we enter into as an important basis in that decision. She explained that a lot of souls like to be reunited with past relatives or friends. So therefore, going to a specific time like a year was not an important factor in deciding where to go. I was made aware during this conversation that when we reincarnate, it is more about life lessons and that continuum of consciousness enabling us to reach high consciousness or awareness levels. Each life lesson that we pass, like an exam, all goes towards who we ultimately become in that cosmic awareness. Also, we face these lessons blinded, not knowing what even the exam is about. So it's our own intentions or our thoughts that are a representation of our true self or our true soul self, to see how we deal with those lessons and if we truly want to pass them or not. Karina actually did not call it a life contract. She instead used the term awareness agreements. She said that every soul who wishes to reincarnate does get the free will to decide what it is they will do in that existence. She said that we are also assigned guides to help us to stay on that path of our life contract. These loving guides can be deceased relatives who want to assist us with staying true to our contract. They could also be angels or other universal entities who are willing to stay with us through our entire contract, keeping us true on course so we gain access to all those opportunities to better our awareness. Linda goes on in great detail explaining life contracts, guardian angels and deceased relatives who decide to be our guides. She also discusses fate and synchronicities, karma, and a complete section of commonly asked questions. Her book is absolutely fascinating and I do implore you to read it all. I feel that I have barely touched the surface with Linda's book. Her experience is the most fascinating one that I have ever read. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this fantastic experience. Right. That's me signing off. Anthony Larkin has yet again completed another narration. If you have enjoyed this material, then please support my channel by subscribing and give me a like on your way out. Thanks again. See you on the next video. Take care.